Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio. So today, we're going to be looking at a rather exciting Mismagius card from the upcoming Sun and Moon 4 set Crimson Invasion. Just revealed on a live stream at Japan's Yokohama Champions League tournament. Gonna be honest, that sounds like fun. Wish I was there. Hey-ho. So, Mismagius is a psychic Pokemon, which means you are hitting for weakness against things like, for instance, Garbodor and Espeon, which is always good, but you have a weakness to darkness Pokemon here, which means you are not being hit for weakness by Garbodor, Espeon, etc. Although, if Yveltal or Speed Darkrai become big, you will be hit for weakness by them, which is a little bit of an issue. Retreat cost of 1 is quite nice because the main attack we're going to be using here is for a single energy, and resistance to fighting is always good because, you know, resistance is nice, especially with Marshadow running around. 110 HP, gonna be honest, fairly standard, not particularly great, not particularly bad, it is fine. Now, the first attack here I like very much indeed. For a single psychic energy, 30 damage, your opponent cannot play any Pokemon tool, special energy, or stadium cards from their hand during their next turn. And if this sounds familiar, it probably should. Because Giratina EX's Chaos Wheel meant that your opponent couldn't play any Pokemon tool, special energy, or stadium cards from his or her hand during his or her next turn. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a single energy Chaos Wheel, which is frankly ludicrous, because we all saw how good Chaos Wheel was. Now this is on a stage 1 rather than a basic, which is an issue, and it only does 30 damage rather than 100. We'll get into the damage in more detail in a moment. But this is still a great attack. Giratina had a great attack. Mismagius does as well. It's got lower HP, lower damage output, etc., but ignore all of that. This could be a lot of fun. Now, against some decks, this will be completely and utterly game-breaking. So let's take, for instance, Persimmon. Persimmon is generally a deck that plays 4 double colourless energy and nothing else. Now, don't forget that in the same set as Mismagius, we're getting Kartana, who has an ability which is just an enhanced hammer, discards a special energy attached to your opponent's one of the Pokemon. Any Pokemon you like. So if you can get rid of their only double colourless on the field, while using this attack, you beat Persimmon there and then. They cannot play any more special energy, and they lose instantly. Now, there is one way around this, and that is the supporter card Pokemon Ranger. Now, Pokemon Ranger allows you to ignore, essentially, any effects of attacks on each player and his or her Pokemon. Now, there's a few things that Pokemon Ranger is quite useful for at the moment. Jolteon might see a boost in play, so you can use this to allow basic Pokemon to hit Jolteon after a Flash Ray. Something like Turtonator using Shell Trap is a little bit annoying because you take the 8 damage counters, so you can use Pokemon Ranger to get rid of that Shell Trap so that you're not taking that extra damage. Yay! But despite all the uses, it's really not been seeing a huge amount of play lately. So I think this could come back if Mismagius becomes popular. Because let's be clear about this. If you rely on special energy, Pokemon tools, or stadium cards, you will lose as soon as Mismagius uses Chaos Wheel, because you're just going to keep doing this attack over and over again until your opponent loses. You might find a deck that's really reliant on a card like Wishful Baton or EXP Share to keep energy on the field. Well, no longer. You can drag something into the active using a Guzma. You can then Chaos Wheel several turns in a row, and your opponent cannot play that Floatstone to retreat it. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. We saw Giratina using Chaos Wheel for years and having a huge amount of success. Mismagius can do this as well. Now, the one thing that does upset me is the 30 damage, but let's be clear about this. If your opponent needs special energy, Pokemon tools or stadiums in order to win the game, they will lose. So take something like a Golisopod Garbodor deck. They generally play 3 grass energy, 4 rainbow energy, and 3 double colourless. So if you combine this with something like Team Flare Grunt or Crushing Hammer to get rid of their grass energy, or they've already played their 3 grass energy, Chaos Wheel wins the game for you because they can't put down any energy, which means they can't attack, which means they can't win. And it's not always about doing a whole bunch of damage and taking 6 knockouts here. It might be that your opponent has only got 3 cards left in their deck, so you don't need to take all the prizes, you just need to slow them down enough that they cannot take the rest of their prizes before they deck out. Something like Vesperquen, for instance, what they would generally do, and I know this is rotated out, but it's a nice example. What they would generally tend to do here is get their deck very, very low while keeping all of their double colourless so they can discard all of their Pokemon, and then they've got just enough double colourless energy to win the game. Well, here, as soon as you start attacking with Chaos Wheel, they can't play double colourless energy, they can't attack, and they are going to deck out, and you are going to win that game. This has huge uses. Maybe your opponent needs something like Altar of the Moon and Floatstone to retreat. Brilliant, because you use this and they now can't do it. To go back to Golisopod Garbodor, I've said how you can lock them out of energy, but of course one thing that Golisopod really wants to do here is retreat out the active constantly, and they're often going to want to use Floatstone to do it. So if you keep using this, they can't play their Floatstone, meaning they can't retreat as often, and if Golisopod can't retreat, it's hitting for a paltry 30 damage, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is not going to be enough to win the game. Speaking of 30 damage, I make no bones about this, ladies and gentlemen, it's low. Even with a choice band, you're only hitting 60, you're talking like a 3-hit KO on a Drampa, for instance. Alright, it's not a great attack. So the thing about Mismagius' Chaos Wheel is this. If you're playing against a deck that you can lock out of the game, brilliant. But if you can't lock them out of the game, you're doing a little bit of disruption, but you're only doing 30 damage. And only doing 30 damage means that sooner or later, your opponent is going to be given enough turns that they can draw into what they need, and they will knock out Mismagius, retreat, play a Guzma, etc. The low damage output is a problem. One of the things that made Giratina so great is that you would be 2-hit KOing everything. But you don't do that with Mismagius. That is a slight issue, ladies and gentlemen. For disruption, this is just as good as Giratina ever was. But the low damage output means it is just for disruption. It is not used for anything else. It's not a huge damaging card. Now the good news is, if you pop a double colourless energy on Mismagius, you can use a second attack. Black Magic, Psychic double colourless, so like I've said, you just whack a double colourless on there. 20 damage times the number of cards in your opponent's hand. Now, a lot of the time this isn't going to do very much. You're going to be doing 60, 80 damage for free energy. It's not particularly good. But used after a Chaos Wheel, that, ladies and gentlemen, is potentially wonderful. Because what you do here is you use Chaos Wheel and they can't play the stadium. They can't play the tool. They cannot play that special energy card, which means they're keeping it in their hand, which means they've got more cards in hand, which means you're hitting for more damage with Black Magic. I quite like Black Magic as an attack, but honestly, I don't think it's amazing, because your opponent is rarely going to have a hand of 12 cards and be allowing you to do massive one-hit KOs. It's kind of like Zoroark here. The damage output that you have is controlled by your opponent, which means that sometimes it'll be great, but against a lot of good opponents, they are going to make sure it's not great. It's not a bad attack, but it's not an attack on which you can rely. and that is absolutely crucial here. So, how good is Mismagius as a whole? I'll tell you one thing, as a couple of quick side notes before I give you a score. Tall Drop Trubbish would not win against this. And also, how upset are you that you don't have the call of Legends Misdreavus that forces both players to draw 3 cards? That would be kind of fun to combine with Black Magic. I don't like this as much as Poltergeist, which of course is an attack that Mismagius had back in Undaunted, where it's just 30 times each of the trainer, supporter and stadiums. But overall, I quite like it. I'm going to give Mismagius between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies. That would lead to barbarity. I like the first attack, but I just think it's not quite powerful enough to be amazing. I like the second attack, but it is too much in your opponent's control for my liking. Although I do love the fact that you've got a good typing and a good weakness here, plus the resistance is always nice. But, ladies and gentlemen, if you disagree, I'd love to hear from you. Or if you agree, get it down in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. There's going to be a PTCGO live stream at 7 PM UK time on Monday. Come and join the fun. If you would like to support the channel and get some bonus podcasts, and who doesn't want bonus podcasts, then go and check out patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio. Also, huge shout out to Antoine Boulet, who is a lovely man, for hooking us up with scans of these super quickly. You're great.